Let's make some fudge. This fudge recipe has been in my family for a really long time, and we've been keeping it a secret, but I got permission to share it. This recipe originally came from my great Aunt Margaret, so 2 greats ago, and we make it every year around Christmas time. We only allow ourselves to make it during the Christmas season because it's really not very good for you, but that's the point of a good Christmas treat, right? It's supposed to be indulgent. This is what we call butter fudge. In case the name didn't already give it away for you, there's a lot of butter in this recipe, but it's so good. So let me share with you exactly how we make it. For this recipe, it is important that you get all your ingredients out ahead of time and prepare everything, because once you get to making the fudge, you do have to watch it and stay right by it the whole time. You can't be running around to find ingredients. So make sure you watch the video all the way through if you're gonna try this recipe for yourself, and take notes, because the timing is really important on this recipe, and I wanna make sure you guys get it right so that you can really enjoy how wonderful this fudge is. My name's Cara, this is Bluebird Homestead. If you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe, and follow along with our channel if you enjoyed today's video. All right, let's get started. First thing you need is a big pot, preferably a pot with a heavy bottom. Normally I use my 6-quart Dutch oven for this fudge recipe. This really big pot is 30 quarts. This is definitely overkill, but it did make the fudge go a lot faster last time I cooked it in this pot. You just want to make sure that whatever pot you use has enough room to expand. Always go a little bigger than you think you would need. Before you turn on the heat, put all of your ingredients into the pot. This is what you'll need. Like the recipe name suggests, you need butter for this recipe. 8 ounces of butter, which is half a pound. This is Kerrygold butter. It's a really good grass-fed butter. It tastes so yummy. I really like Kerrygold butter. It's one of my favorites. I've also used Kirkland brand salted stick butter before. Hold on, I have some over here. This butter in the past. You just wanna make sure you're using actual butter, not a fake margarine or spread, because this is the main component of the recipe. So, 8 ounces, half a pound of butter into your pot. And if you're using normal stick butter, 2 of these sticks equals the same amount as 1 big package of Kerrygold. Then you need 2 cans of evaporated milk, 1 12-ounce can and 1 5-ounce can. I've never used normal milk for this recipe. I've only ever used the evaporated milk because that's the way I was taught to make it. One whole 16 fluid ounce bottle of light corn syrup. It's important to let all the drips of the syrup completely drain out, because every little bit counts and you don't want to throw off the proportions of the recipe. So we're just gonna be patient for a second and let this drip all the way out. I also let all the evaporated milk completely drain out of each of the cans too. I just didn't film that entire process for you. I thought the drips coming out of this bottle was kind of mesmerizing to watch. The last ingredient is 6 cups of white sugar. It's important that you level off the sugar. Don't leave a rounded scoop and don't leave any holes. Now we're just gonna cook down this whole mixture until it reaches 244 degrees Fahrenheit. You can bump it all the way up to 248, but I typically pull it off right at 244 and go on to the next step. It's important to watch it very carefully and to be stirring the entire time because you don't want any burnt flavor or burnt bits on the bottom. It is also important, even though it's very tempting when you're stirring for a long time, to make sure you keep it at a low heat. Don't bump it up to medium or high heat to try to get it to come to temperature faster because you'll just end up burning it. It just needs to cook low and slow for a little while. The other day when I did this in the big pot, it took about 20 minutes or so. It definitely takes longer if you have a smaller pot because there's not as much surface area on the bottom getting heated up and it's thicker. So the bigger your pot, the faster this process will go for you. It will kind of vary depending on the day too and what the temperature is like outside. Fudge can be a little bit finicky, but it's so worth it if you get it right. We've got our heat on low, and I always like to turn on my exhaust fan range hood because we have a propane range and I just always turn it on when I'm cooking. So I'll mute that noise for you guys so you don't have to listen to it the whole time. When you make fudge, it goes through a couple of different changes in colors and consistency as it's cooking. I will be recording the entire process for y'all so that you can see exactly what you're looking for as you're cooking it. The best thing you can do though is have a temperature gauge and to check it occasionally as you're cooking. Right now it's at 78 degrees. That's kind of our baseline. We just started here. This laser thermometer is going to be your best friend when making fudge. All you have to do is pull the trigger and it shoots a laser out which will accurately measure the temperature. Apparently I'm 91 degrees Fahrenheit right now. And you're just gonna keep doing that periodically every couple seconds to make sure you're watching your temperature really thoroughly. In the past, I've used a normal candy thermometer, but I find this isn't exactly as accurate as the heat gun because when you're stirring the mixture, occasionally you might bump into this, which will throw off your temperature if this touches the side of the pot. And then also I've used this in the past, which I still love this temperature gauge for cooking chicken and different meats. However, when you're putting it in the fudge mixture to measure the temperature, you have to be very careful this tip doesn't touch the bottom because that'll give you an accurate reading. Also, you need to make sure you wipe it clean every time because if there's fudge residue on the thermometer gauge, it'll give it an inaccurate reading as well. That's why I like using this the best. I feel like it gives you the most accurate reading. I'm using a metal spoon to stir my mixture. When you're stirring, you want to make sure you're scraping all sides of the pot and all the different corners and nooks and crannies. Don't just stir right in the center because then you'll end up with some burnt bits around the sides of your pot. This mixture will get very hot as it continues to cook. Sometimes I find that it's handy, if it's particularly bothering me that day, to use an oven mitt to hold the spoon while you're stirring. And just be careful not to touch the sides of the pot with your hand as you're stirring it around. The mixture will start off kind of a pale, light tan butter color basically, and as it continues to cook down, it'll slowly start to come to a simmer. That's good, you want it to keep simmering and thickening. It'll take on an almost foamy texture, which you can kind of tell from the video here, and it'll be releasing a lot of steam. Be careful that steam is on the warmer side, so this is where wearing an oven mitt does come in handy. This is also the stage where it will start to take on volume and will rise up in your pot a little bit. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is why it's important to pick a pot larger than the pure volume of ingredients because it will take on size as it cooks. Eventually, that color will start to change to a slightly darker, kind of starting to get that caramel color tones. And as the caramel color deepens, the mixture will also begin to resist your spoon just a little bit. It'll still be pretty thin, but you will feel it start to slightly thicken up underneath your spoon as you're cooking it. You need to stir this mixture constantly until it reaches 244 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure you're exact about this part. This is where you can either make it or break it when it comes to making fudge. You have to make sure your temperature is right and your timing. Keep an eye on it because as the temperature increases, it'll hover kind of around the 230-ish mark for quite a while, and then it'll jump to 244 really quickly. At least that's how I've experienced it. My fudge mixture is now at 243 degrees Fahrenheit. I just hollered over at Ryan to come over and help me pour this out. This mixture will go to 244 pretty quickly here. It'll only take another couple seconds. And then we're gonna pour it into another bowl. You don't wanna leave it in the same pot because it'll continue to cook because the pot is still hot, even if you do take it off the heat. It's important you put it into a different vessel. I'm putting mine into my KitchenAid stand mixer bowl because the next step is where we are going to be incorporating air into our fudge by beating it up with the stand mixer. So I'm just trying to scrape out all the fudge mixture from our pot and put it into the KitchenAid stand mixing bowl. That took exactly 30 minutes of cooking on the stove to reach 245 degrees. And Ryan just helped me pour it into this mixing bowl. Be careful, this mixing bowl will be scalding hot, so don't touch it. So you're just gonna put it in a bowl that you can mix it. I have a KitchenAid stand mixer and I feel like that works the best for this. I think my great aunt whose recipe this came from used a wooden spoon. If you're using a wooden spoon, you're gonna have to beat it for a really long time, like almost 45 minutes. It'll go a lot faster in the stand mixer. So set a timer for 15 minutes. Do not touch this with the stand mixer until 15 minutes has passed. We always use a 13x9 pan to put our fudge into. That's just what we've always done, but any pan would work. You just wanna make sure you grease it really well. So while this fudge is cooling for the next 15 minutes, I'm gonna put a lot of butter all over this pan. This is some more of the same Kerrygold butter that we used in the recipe. If you put it on a paper towel or something, it goes in a lot easier. Make sure you go all the way up the sides too. It will stick to your pan if you don't grease it thoroughly, so don't skimp on this step. Growing up, one of my favorite parts about making butter fudge, my dad was always the butter fudge maker in our family, is scraping the bowl after you pour it into the pan and you're waiting for it to cool. It tastes pretty much exactly like a soft caramel. And once you beat it up, then that changes the consistency to be a fudge consistency. So right now it's kind of like a soft caramel. You only have a few minutes that you can enjoy these little bits because this will get very hard very quickly and turn into a hard caramel basically. So enjoy them and have a little treat while you're waiting for your fudge to cool. It's so good. You're gonna use a paddle attachment to beat up this fudge mixture. This is the color you're going for your butter fudge when it reaches 245 degrees or 244. I like to try to pull it at 244 because it's always gonna take an extra second to actually get it off the heat. And the temperature is still gonna keep going while you're getting your oven mitts on and getting ready to pour it. So it ended up being 245 when it finally came out. We started pulling it off at 244 though. It's been 10 to 15 minutes now, and we are gonna mix it on a speed 1 or whatever the lowest speed is for your stand mixer or handheld mixer. And we're gonna let it incorporate, and I'll show you when you're supposed to stop it. It's not an exact timing on when you're supposed to stop it. It's kind of more of a look than anything else. I'll explain when we get to that stage. What you're not looking for is a super duper liquidy consistency. Right now, it's liquidy and it's smooth and looks almost like a puddle. We're wanting it to thicken up just a little bit in the mixing bowl, and then once we pour it into the pan, it'll continue to harden. It's been a few minutes now. We're getting close to the right consistency. Just have to watch it very carefully. Don't walk away from the bowl at this stage. Making fudge is not something you want to walk away from and do on the back burner. You got to be active and watching it like a hawk. If you can't tell, I'm kind of passionate about making butter fudge. You're going for a certain consistency. If you watch the beater closely, as the beater turns around, you can see there's kind of like almost a valley or a ridge that's forming. The mixture is no longer completely liquid. It's got some texture to it. I'll slow down the video so you can see a little bit more of what I'm talking about. Okay, see how it's kind of like stuck to the sides? That's when we want to take it out. All right, it's kind of hard to explain on camera, but it started like sticking to the sides a little thicker. That's when you want to take it out of here. And you gotta move pretty quickly because it will cool up. The grand total time that this mixed for was exactly 13 minutes and 40 seconds. Now this is gonna vary slightly depending on your temperature. So again, don't go so much by the time, just use that as a guide. Go by more of what you see happening in the bowl. This mixture is pretty thick now, and it's already starting to stiffen up on me. A stiff spoon works really well here. I'm also using an oven mitt to hold the bowl with because this bowl is still very hot from the mixture that was just 240 some degrees a few minutes ago. After you get it into your bowl, don't dilly-dally around. Go ahead and spread it out into whatever shape you want. This mixture kind of looks like peanut butter right now, I think, but it's a lot thicker than peanut butter. It hardens up pretty quickly as it cools. A lot of the steps in fudge making just go by pretty quick. You gotta be on the ball with it, but it's so worth it. When you get that end result, it's delicious, I think. It's also very satisfying to see the fudge smoothed out and to get all the creases out. I think it looks nice and it's kind of a fun job to do. It has a little bit of a sheen to it still. If you beat it too long, it'll be duller and a little more drier in texture. All right, you had to move really fast for that last part to get it into the pan before it starts to harden on you. Kind of smush it into the pan as best you can, and then you want to score it into whatever shape you want. We just typically do little 1-inch, kind of by 1-inch squares. I hope it came across okay on camera. I did not clean off the beater just to show you, but it kind of thickened up when you would lift the beater up. I recorded the whole time lapse of the process of it mixing so that hopefully you can see exactly when to take it out. Before it is completely cool, don't forget to score it into whatever shape you want. I'm just doing little squares. That way we have little bite-sized pieces. I told my family I was making some butter fudge, and I already have them calling me and texting me asking me to bring them some. Plus, some family and friends who've had it before have been asking for it. It's definitely a hit with most people who've tried it. It should be pliable, kind of like Play-Doh, but break apart when you pull it once it's started to cool a little bit. And it'll continue to harden up a little bit as it cools. So after the fudge is scored, you just want to let it cool and then transfer it to an airtight container. It is really, really good if you enjoy it right now too. So be sure to scrape all the goodness off the beater and in the bowl as well. Let me know if you give this recipe a try in the comments below and how you like it. I think the two biggest tips for having this turn out successfully is to make sure you're watching the temperature, stirring it constantly, and taking it off right at 244. And then when you're beating it in the stand mixer, to watch it really closely and pull it out before it starts to get too thick. There's kind of a sweet little window there, and it does take a little bit of practice to get that window perfect. I hope you guys love this recipe as much as my family does. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Cara. Please like and subscribe to our channel and share this recipe with a friend who you think might enjoy it. Bye all.